Story 1. Fire your best employee? Fine, I'll drag the whole place down too. This happened a few years ago, but it came to mind again recently. I used to work for a company handling all of their media design stuff, graphic design, photography, live event AV, video editing, and more. The company put on big events, and as the years went on, they kept piling on more and more unrelated responsibilities until I was basically doing the work of 4 different people. On top of that, they never chipped in for any of the materials we needed. Every piece of media equipment had to be bought out of my own pocket. I always labeled my gear with my name so nothing would get lost if I lent it out. Over time, I built up a pretty solid collection of equipment by hunting for deals and buying secondhand. By my 5th year there, I had thousands of dollars worth of high-end equipment that was being used in almost every part of their promotions and event production. I think you can already guess where this is going. One day, my boss called me into the office and told me they were downsizing. They had hired someone fresh out of college with 0 real-world experience to take over my job, along with a few others. I was blindsided. After that meeting, someone from corporate followed me back to my office to help me pack up my stuff. He told me word for word, "Take everything that is yours, you won't be coming back." So that's exactly what I did. They clearly thought I'd just grab a small box with some photos and maybe a desk plant. Instead, they watched me load crate after crate of media and event gear into my car. At the time, I drove a 2004 Ford Explorer, and by the time I was finished, it was packed full. With every load, I could see my boss getting more and more panicked. At one point, he snapped, "You can only take things that are yours." Through my anger and sadness, I calmly told him that everything I was taking was mine, and I had receipts to prove it if he wanted to see them. The best moment came when I said I needed access to the arena's AV booth and catwalk. The look on his face said everything. We went up there, and I started unplugging all the cameras I had loaned out to the events team, each one clearly marked with my name. Honestly, I felt like the Grinch just walking around collecting all the random things with my name on them. Driving away, I was heartbroken that a company I had poured everything into replaced me with someone younger and inexperienced. But at the same time, I won't lie, watching their faces as I stripped the place bare felt incredibly satisfying. Looking back, that was the most toxic job I've ever had. The company didn't even last another year before it shut down completely, and I can't help but believe I played a part in that. All I can think is, if they had just paid me fairly and bought the proper equipment themselves instead of making me provide everything, they wouldn't have ended up having to start from zero. If you're still watching, means you're enjoying the stories. Subscribe so you can look forward to more stories like these. Now on to Story 2. No one clocks out before 5 and yet no overtime? Okay, sure. Several years back, I worked at an aerospace manufacturing company. And yeah, you can probably already guess this doesn't end well. As a setup operator, my job was to come in before everyone else, usually 3 or 4 hours before the shift started, and make sure all the 5-axis mills were dialed in. That meant checking calibration, making sure the ATC, automatic tool changer magazines, were loaded right, and verifying the tooling wasn't dull or broken. If something was damaged, part of my process was pulling out the carrier, swapping the cutter, and resetting the cutter height with a gauge so every tooltip sat in the exact same spot for its holder every single time. After I'd been there for a while, the company got bought out, and new management took over. My schedule had always been from 3 or 4 in the morning until 1 or 2 in the afternoon, sometimes earlier if a new job dropped on the floor. It worked great for me. I dodged traffic, and I got paid a little extra for the shift differential. But a few weeks into the takeover, someone noticed I was always leaving early while still racking up hours. So they decided to put in a new rule. Everyone works 9 to 5, no exceptions, and you've got to be at your station ready to go right when the clock hits 9. I tried explaining to my new boss why I left early, but he only cared about numbers and cash flow, not what I actually did. Fine, I thought, you want 9 to 5? I'll give you 9 to 5. So instead of rolling in at 4, I'd sit in my car until 8:45, walk in, wait until exactly 9, punch in, and head to the floor. First thing I do is walk up to the first machine, hit the e-stop, and tell the operator it's not ready, because it hasn't been set up. Same thing all the way down the line, hit stop, tell them to wait. Then I start at the end with my platinum gauges, calibrating every magazine, checking every tool, and making sure everything was in spec. When the first magazine was done, I homed the probe so the machine knew its 3D space, then moved to the next. That first setup alone took about 40 minutes, because I wasn't rushing. Meanwhile, the entire line was sitting dead. Nobody could run anything until I finished and certified the machines. Halfway through the second unit, my new manager storms over, asking why nothing's running, what's going on, and so on. I calmly told him this was my job, the same one I used to come in hours early to do so production wouldn't be interrupted. If I start at 9, Then nothing's running until I'm done. I told him the line should be ready in another 5 or 6 hours. He told me to unlock everything and get it going, but I refused. Nothing was checked, and I wasn't about to sign off on machines that weren't certified. If I did, QC would reject every part on the spot. So I gave him a choice. Either run the line and have $1 million worth of parts rejected, or let me finish and lose $1 million in production time, and then let me go back to my old schedule tomorrow. The result? The plant got paid for a full day of doing nothing, my boss got chewed out for killing a day's worth of production, and I got my old schedule back with him off my back. Story 3. Just a standard 8-hour shift and that's all? Fine by me. I worked as a developer for a big financial services company, and since we didn't have a lot of proper tools, I usually got stuck with creating different tools, scripts, reports, and all kinds of little programs to automate things and make up for the weaknesses of the store-bought software we had. At one point, I had somewhere around 300 apps or scripts running in production. Because leadership kept asking for more, and just to keep everything running, I usually ended up doing about 4 to 10 hours of overtime every week. After about a year, I got a new boss. She made it very clear that I was not going to be allowed to do any overtime at all. She said I could only work 8 hours per day, not a second more. No exceptions. Since I wasn't a full-time employee, I didn't really have any way to fight back. I normally started work at 8, so with a 30-minute lunch that set my schedule at 8 to 4:30. Later that same week, one of the upstream systems changed their data feed, and it broke one of our downstream systems. Problems like that happened often enough that I had already built translation tools to fix those feed-related issues, but I still needed a few minutes to figure out what exactly had changed so I could adjust my own code. So there I am, with both my boss and her boss watching over my shoulder while I work through the problem, and I spot the issue pretty quickly. Then the clock hits 4:30. I lock my computer, stand up, and say, well, it's 4:30. That's my 8 hours. I'll see you tomorrow. And I walk out. The mix of confusion, anger, and frustration on their faces was just chef's kiss. At that point, all the overnight backups had stopped and would not run until I fixed the issue. That meant a global financial company had no backups for that entire night and would be in deep trouble if literally anything went wrong. The next morning, I walked to my desk at 7:56 because I always made sure I was never late, and my boss's boss is already waiting for me. He takes me into his office and calmly says, "From now on, I'll be managing your timesheet and you can put in as many hours as you need." I ended up leaving that job about 4 or 5 months later, and not long after, the whole building got laid off. Out of about 200 people, only 2 weren't let go, and one of those 2 was the guy the first had hired to take over for me since someone had to keep all the code running. That's all for now. Don't forget to subscribe so I can keep bringing you more of these stories. Thanks for sticking around till the end. See you next time, and take care.